Well, welcome back to the iWealth podcast. I have Shelby Nicholl with me today. Actually, Shelby and I just met not too long ago, late fall, Shelby. So I really appreciate you being here. We're going to talk about death, which is not a great subject. We're going to talk about family meetings, which is a good subject. But you and I had a quick conversation about an experience you had. And I thought it would be really cool. At iWealth, we have what we call family meetings, but that's our terms. And so I'm really interested to hear how your family meeting went and then, what those outcomes and things were.
I'm excited to share this story because it was such a wonderful and personal experience. So this was with my in-laws. So my husband's father passed away this fall in September, and
Sorry.
we found out he was ill kind of at the beginning of, I guess, August. We had 5 weeks from the time that we found out he was very ill to his passing. And in the middle of that, we had this really lovely, incredible family meeting with my in-laws, the parents, the kids, which is my husband and his brother, and the wives. So it was just the 6 of us.
So interesting and so sorry for that, especially just so new. But okay, so this diagnosis comes in
Yeah.
and we know what's inevitable that will happen.
Yeah.
Who decides we should have like how did the family meeting come about? Who decided that?
Yeah, so my in-laws were always incredibly private about their money. We knew that my father-in-law had retired early. We knew that he had been a really incredible investor and he really enjoyed it. But they'd always been very private about it. Your money is your money, our money is our money. We don't talk about our money. You'll find out when we're dead, kind of
Right.
thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
But then the diagnosis happens and we know that he is going to die. We didn't think it would be 5 weeks. We
Hmm.
thought it might be a few months, right? When that comes about. But we knew it was happening, and then he was getting sick very quickly and just really, going downhill quickly. And so he called the family meeting.
He did.
He did. He did. And he came to this with such bravery and grace. Um
What do you think was going through his head?
I
Why did he finally say, let's have this meeting, you think?
I know it was such an interesting thing because we really just thought we would just find out when he was gone, and yes, things would be handled. But I believe he did it because he was really worried about his wife, Kim, my mother-in-law, and he wanted to know that he had done everything possible that he possibly could in order to care for Kim and care for the kids, but especially for Kim. They had been married for over 50 years. They had gotten married when Kim was just, I think, 17 years old. So
Wow.
they'd
Love
been
story.
together their entire lives. And so I
Yeah.
think he really wanted to make sure she was cared for. And by the way, prior to the family meeting, he did other things in order to prepare and to take things off her plate for later. He sold the extra car. We live
Okay.
in St. Louis. We get a lot of hail here. Everybody gets their roofs paid for by insurance, by the way, because we get hail damage on our roofs. You call and you get the insurance to pay for your roof. Basically, that's how it works here. He knew he needed a new roof. He got that taken care of. He sold various tools and just cleaned out closets and did all of these things to really prepare and to try to smooth things out as best as he could.
Wow.
And so I think the family meeting became the next evolution of it, right? So about, a week and a half or 2 weeks in, he said to us, I want to have a family meeting. And then he continued to progress a little bit worse. And he's like, we're going to have it on Sunday. And so it was a Sunday. He called it ahead. It was just the adults, and
And
that's
where
how it
did you go?
happened.
I mean, talk about true love. I mean, 50
Yeah.
years and 17 and cleaning up things that he doesn't want to like, that's love.
Yes.
Where was the meeting at? And then who was there again?
Yeah, so the meeting was at their home. We have, two families obviously involved, or two kids, right? The kids are old enough to stay home by themselves, so left all the children at home. It was just the parents, my in-laws, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, and then my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, my husband, who's the son, and me. So it was
Okay. All
just the
right.
6 of us.
So you come in on that Sunday afternoon or whenever
Yeah.
that was, you walk in. Was there donuts sitting around and coffee? Like, was there let's eat and talk? Like, what was that like?
It was really, really well planned out, number 1. I'm sure there was food of some sort, probably some type of sweet. I don't really recall. What I do recall though is my father-in-law sitting in his, sort of favorite chair in the living room. He had a small table in front of him that he'd moved there. He had his laptop propped up and he had connected his laptop to the television so that he could show us things. He also handed each of us a one-page printout front and back. One
Okay.
copy for each person, so the wives had it as well as the sons.
Hmm.
And then my mother-in-law came around with pens, and so we all have our pens and our paper, and my father-in-law begins the meeting.
Wow. Wow. What's on the paper? Is it a budget? Is it a balance sheet? What's on the paper?
Yeah, what's on the paper, if you think about what your family is going to need, it really was the majority of those items. And I don't mean it was Social Security numbers, but what I do mean is it said, here's what our income is. So it was a balance sheet in that sense, a cash flow, high level cash flow statement. It was also things like passwords. So we started with also some of that minutia. So let's start there first and then we'll go to the money if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
We started with passwords, things like that, things that were a little less personal, a little more practical and just run of the mill. So we started with passwords. He's got a password tracker. He gave us access to that. He also went through where all the documents were physically stored. There's a safe in this closet, there's a thing in this room, here's where the
Mm-hmm.
key is, etc. Went through also the trust and how things were set up ahead of time and where those documents could be found. We also, I guess, then we talked about money and then we talked about medical directive
Okay.
and we
All
talked
right.
about final wishes.
Wow. What was your sense of your mother-in-law from a standpoint of knowledge? Like this was all news to you four around the table,
Yes.
the siblings and their, and their spouses. But did you get a sense that your mother-in-law was getting a clue into some of this stuff at the same time you were, or what was your sense there?
I think on some of the practical matters, meaning like where were passwords held and how did you log into accounts, things like that, she definitely was learning alongside us. In
Hmm.
terms of the big picture and what they had, where it was organized, their wishes on the medical directive, things like that, they were in sync. They had those conversations, they had made those decisions together. It was definitely not, they were a very equal relationship. They
Sure.
traded off duties very well.
Yeah.
And there was little of that. My parents, comparatively, for example, my dad can be a little bit more in control of certain activities than my mom can. And my father in law and mother in law was always very, very equal.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so cool. So one of the things that I've learned over the last 30 plus years of helping clients, and we've had many family meetings, but one of the things that I've seen, let's say that the husband took the particular role, like in this situation of investing, like enjoyed it and was good at it.
Hmm.
His wife, your mother-in-law, might not be. My
Yes.
wife might not enjoy it. So, was there a backup plan on who's going to help now direct the stocks and in mutual funds and withdrawals? Or was that kind of laid out by him that day on you guys need to help mom through this?
Yeah, it was. The sons have definitely divided and conquered since my father in law's death. One of them tends to take on more of like the home maintenance and making sure that my mother in law, has everything that she needs. My husband can take on more of like the financial stuff, as an example. What I would say my father-in-law also did though is knowing that Kim would not be as interested in investing, is he really did change up the structure of the investments prior to his death. So he was a very DIY investor, and I think the one place that could have been improved would have been if they had an advisor that he had already picked. At some point, Kim is going to be interviewing. We're not there yet. It's only been a few months, but she's
Hmm.
going to be interviewing financial advisors. And I think it would have been nice. That would have probably been the only thing. And I think if he'd had more time between diagnosis and death, we
Yeah.
probably would have identified and found a financial advisor for her to work with.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just told this story in the last 10 days to an advisor here. So there's a family we work with, and the dad, worked with the same accountant that we worked with up in the cities. Long story short, I end up at their house in Wisconsin with dad and mom. And he's going to pass away in the next month or two. And he's always taken care of the investments, but needed somebody. Got
Mm.
referred to me, introduced to me. We sat down and he was a stock picker, good one. And so his point was he wanted continuity. And luckily, he had those couple of months to figure out the continuity, talk to people he trusted. And we still work with all the, now mom and dad are both deceased, but we still work with all the kids. But that was kind of the continuity. But I've seen that happen where they just don't have that that financial advisor piece. But what a beautiful thing to have the family meeting. What is
Yeah.
something that you remember now that he's gone? There has to be a phrase or a statement or something that you remember from that meeting that he said. Is there something that stands out?
Yeah, there definitely is. And let's talk a little bit more about then what he went through on the money side,
Sure.
if that's good.
Yeah.
From a money standpoint, once we transitioned out of those passwords and some of those kind of practical, tiny matters, and we kind of got into the meat of the meeting, he showed his balance sheet, what money was coming in, what money was going out. He talked about what was going to happen with Social Security, what was going to be the impact to Kim at that point in time, that she would take on his Social Security and then hers would stop, the dollar values, et cetera. So we talked through that. We talked through the balances in the bank accounts and in all of the investment accounts. And I think that him being able, even as a DIY investor, to get to share that with his family and what he had built, there was a moment of real pride about that.
Mm,
My father-in-law was a classic millionaire next door
yep.
mindset kind of person, right? He had saved his way to wealth and they had been diligent savers. They had been careful with their money, etc. And he got to share, not just that we got to find out after he was gone, but he got to share that at the last moment at a time period that was acceptable for him, that it didn't feel like bragging, but he also got to bask in that, oh my gosh, you guys have built this thing,
Mm,
and that moment of joy. And I think that was a really just an incredible gift for him to get to do that. And then we also talked through medical directive, and we talked about the hard things of what a medical directive means and what he really wanted in those moments. And
wow.
we talked about where those documents were housed. And we talked about what did he want for a funeral process and for, at that point, what did he want for services, et cetera. And we talked about that. And all of those conversations then led up to this moment at the very end where my father-in-law was raised in Northern Ireland. He grew up in Belfast. He was a
Mm,
classic British, not a very huggy kind of man,
yeah.
right? And he said at the very end, he said, well, one thing is with all of this is I think I've got to become a little bit more American. He said, sons, I think he said, come in. And he gave them each a hug. And he said,
Mm,
I love you. He said, we should have said it more, but I love you. And gave them a hug. And it was
wow.
just this beautiful moment. Not only that we had this clarity of all of the practical matters that a family needs, but we
Yeah.
also had this moment to celebrate him and feel that love.
I can feel when you describe it. I can feel it. That's amazing. Yeah. Big tough guy that finally says, "Okay,
Yeah.
let's all hug it out here." Yeah.
Yeah. And then thinking about it since, we've realized like his family legacy, what he's really done in the family is been an amazing husband and father. And that's the legacy that he built. And then now his kids, his sons are continuing on. And, we have my stepson, one of our oldest is 24 and married and has a baby. And we're seeing the results of this parenting now through multiple generations. And it's just a beautiful family legacy that Harry built.
Yeah, that is beautiful. That is so cool. And congratulations on the grandbaby. So,
Yeah. Yeah. He's the
yeah.
cutest.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard that forever from clients. I'm not there yet. My daughter just got married, but I've heard like just wait until you have grandkids. Like there's just something different about it.
There is something different, Brad, and because he's my stepson and I came into his life later, I never anticipated how much I would love this little guy. Like it is It has been such a shock. It's been so incredible. I just love this little man. He's
Love that.
he's
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah, yeah. So going into this, and we'll wrap this up soon, but going into this, Shelby, like that morning, walking into that house, the emotions that you were feeling, right? Going into that. And then that afternoon or evening when you left, like, what was it a lot different? Like, how did you feel when you left that place?
Yeah, we were all nervous coming into the meeting, right? And we knew it had to be done, but it was also something that no one wanted to go to, right? Nobody hopes to have a family meeting because your dad is dying, right?
Right.
That is not a meeting you want to have. And we all felt that. We felt that heaviness all day. We came out of the meeting, and especially me, knowing what I know about the financial advising world, right? I work with financial advisors all the time in my business. I know how rare it is to have a meeting like this as a family, and I knew how powerful it was. So for me, I was just one touch that it was us and that we got to benefit from it, but I was also just incredibly taken that he could have had the strength to do it as a
Yeah,
person, and just incredibly admirable that, and in sort of awe that Harry could have this meeting with us and that he had the foresight to do it and he had the bravery to do it. And it's, when you and I chatted, I was like, sign me up. I want to share this story
yeah,
because I want other families to have this same bravery and have this same experience because it's smoothed out. We all hear about all the horrible stories after a parent has died, and how the families can fall apart and fight amongst themselves. There will be none of that because we were all in the room together and we know what the parents want, and it's smooth and easy and well planned.
yeah.
Yeah.
Knowing what you know now, if you talk to a family like Harry 5 years ago, after being through this, that hold everything tight to the vest, because that's the way they were raised, and they don't share anything about their financials or anything. Do you have it? What advice would you give that Harry now knowing what you know?
I think what I would probably say is it's interesting. I've thought a lot about this because my family probably has shared overshared, and that creates some different constrictions and different things in there too. So I'm not saying that sharing is always the exact right answer. But what I do think you should do, if you're not willing to share in a one on one format occasionally, which I think is probably the right ideal thing, but can be really uncomfortable, is put this all down in writing. Write a letter to your family and detail it out. Do the one-page handout like Harry did. There are things that you can do that if something happened to you unexpectedly, that can smooth these things out for your family. And it really does communicate how much you love them
Yeah,
when you take these actions ahead of time. If your family dynamic is one where you can have the family meeting,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Have the meeting, do it with the advisor if that's good. I think that's an excellent way to do it. But have the meeting, have these hard conversations. I know they're hard, they're emotional, they're tough. Have the conversation.
yeah. I love that. And what I've seen through the years is that I always tell mom and dad this. We don't have to share the numbers. Like, give them the one page, just leave the numbers off. But I have
Yeah.
IRAs, here's where they are. I have other monies, here's where they are. But here's power of attorney, here's what I want to have happen. But I have family members that treat their kids equally and some that treat them equitably. And what I mean is, all of a sudden you're a farmer and the son's running the farm and the two daughters aren't. They might not get the farm. But if it comes from mom and dad in a family meeting, there's a better chance that those three siblings will have Thanksgiving dinner together.
Yes.
So mom and
Absolutely.
dad need to communicate their wishes, even if it's not the dollar amounts, to those other family members so everybody gets along.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you too, also when it comes to medical directives, that having those conversations up front will also help the family get along, because there's always this worry that maybe the siblings won't agree on what does the medical directive interpretation mean. And so the more you can talk about what does that really mean to you, the better and smoother. And you're exactly right, Brad. You're just protecting the family dynamic in the next generation. There's way too many people that are, distant from their family. And half the time it's because of things not being said.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, I know how busy you are, and I'm so thankful that you would take some time out of your day and share the story because I think people need to hear it. I think hopefully this unlocks some for some people, and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I've wanted to share this story, and so thank you for giving me an avenue to do so.